Tuesday afternoon, Weather Impact Live, and we've got our special show today. We are joined by Chief Meteorologist Lou Turner up at First Coast News in Jacksonville, and from Atlanta at the Weather Channel, Dr. Rick Knabb. And I tell you what, guys, for no really direct impact at this moment, we have a lot going on the weather map and the next 4 to 5 days in and around the United States and out in the tropics. So we're going to get right into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with our next storm. We have Tropical Storm Jerry. We're going to knock that out right away because I think we have more concerns that Dr. Knabb and Lou are going to be having to talk about here as we get in towards the weekend. So, guys, let's start there. Let's start with what we're watching in the tropics. We got a new tropical storm today, Tropical Storm Jerry. It is way out there. It's about, it's a little less than 1,000 miles east of Barbados, okay? Also, in the Western Gulf, you see that area right there coming off the Yucatan. That is about a 10% chance for development. Not worried about that. We'll talk about that coming up. So there's Tropical Storm Jerry, 45-mile-per-hour winds. This was what was Invest 95L that we've been tracking for you the last several days, and it's been on the models for about a week now. It is looking pretty good. It's moving to the west at 24 miles per hour. That's a really good clip. Pressure's down to 1,006 millibars and 45-mile-per-hour winds. This looks a whole lot better. That's the visible satellite, of course, so we're losing daylight out there, but you can see it's a good-looking storm. So here's the very first track from the Hurricane Center. This came out at 11 a.m. this morning. We'll get a new one coming up at 5 p.m., but this includes the intensity as well. And you can see we go basically to hurricane status by Wednesday afternoon with winds of around 75 miles per hour. We'll go to, it looks like Cat 1 still 90-mile-per-hour winds Thursday and Friday, even into Saturday, and they keep it up through Sunday. Now, that little dot right there is Bermuda. So most of the modeling seems to want to go just to the east of Bermuda. That would be good. Usually the worst weather would be on the right side of that track. Speaking of the models, you can see that here, where they're starting to kind of do a pretty good turn. Now, I do want to say, before we even get to Bermuda, notice the islands down here, because to me, it looks like most of the modeling's right in this range here. St. Martin, Anguilla, Puerto Rico over here, of course, Barbados down here. It looks like it stays right off these Leeward Islands. I mean, just barely, but if it stays out here, they're going to be fine. And right now, that is where we're kind of leaning with this. Still, Bermuda has to watch it as well, but you can see a lot of the models are even trying to turn a little bit more to the east. And a lot of these actually are starting to, some of the later runs are suggesting maybe a sharper turn out towards the east. Okay, Tropical Storm Jerry, that's it. There's really not a whole lot to talk about. Now, let's get back to the Gulf and the Yucatan Peninsula here. You see this? That's an area of showers and thunderstorms that actually started over here. This is that low pressure, Central American gyre is what we call it. It basically kind of sits out here and just spins like this, okay? And then what it does is it creates these showers and thunderstorms, and they become the seeds for tropical systems. So one was sitting here. It's now sitting here. And the forecast says it gets out in here in the Bay of Campeche and then goes kind of further off towards the west. All right? This only has a 10% chance for development. We're not worried about this one, but if you have interest, obviously, in the Yucatan, I think places like Cozumel, Cancun, that weather will improve over the next 24 hours, while most of this begins to slowly drift off towards the west. But then it gets out over water, and then it has a small chance of drifting further west-northwest into Mexico. Quite a bit of wind shear around there, only a 10% chance of development, and not a big worry for most folks. Now we got to shift gears. Dr. Knabb, so we've got a big trough coming across the northern U.S., the Great Lakes, southern Canada, and that is really going to start to put together a pretty good storm along the southeast and mid-Atlantic coast by the end of this week. What do you think?
I think that the coastal flood issues are going to be significant with that system, and we've already had that this week, haven't we, with this onshore flow south of our big high, and that's only going to get worse with time because even though we've got lots of warm waters here, it doesn't look like we're going to get, at least not at the beginning, late this weekend, tropical development, but that warm water will still play a role. But as you said, we've got this big upper level trough, and this big Canadian Great Lakes trough is also going to bring a shortwave trough into the southeast, as we'll see in the models here. So on here, the modeling shows you the colors, the low-level spin of this frontal boundary that's straight from South Florida eastward, and you can see the front that is coming through the Great Lakes and the Appalachians the next couple of days. But there's that big trough. And troughing in the middle and upper levels in the eastern U.S. has been persistent this hurricane season, keeping all the big systems, including now Jerry, from making it to the continental U.S. But this is not going to be all good trough. Part of this is going to be bad trough because of what it's going to generate locally. So there goes the front off the East Coast in a couple of days. But look at this troughing back here in the white lines and the dashed white lines. That upper level troughing is going to interact with our pre-existing frontal boundaries and colors our low level spin. That's a new surface cyclone that will start getting going late this week off the coast of northern Florida. And that is a non-tropical starter for a low pressure system. And it looks like it will slowly move northward toward the Carolinas and the mid-Atlantic. And that means more enhanced onshore flow. And how long does it hang around? How far north does it get? How long does it hang around in the mid-Atlantic? We could be talking about this same system a week from now. But here's the kicker for folks like in northern Florida and then up to the Carolinas. We've already had the onshore flow today. And as that front approaches, then this high behind the front will strengthen and dig south. And with that short wave, we'll get low pressure forming farther to the south. So that's going to really tighten the pressure gradient in the West Atlantic from Florida up to the Carolinas starting on Thursday. And then it just gets worse on Friday as our low pressure starts to take shape east of central Florida on Friday. So this is going to be a perhaps significant coastal flooding event and another onshore beach erosion rainfall event for North Carolina. But at least for you folks in Florida, if that low does form as forecast by this weekend, on the backside of it, things will dry out a little bit. So I think for northeastern Florida, like in the Jacksonville area, the coastal flood problem could be pretty significant late this week.
And Lou, you've been dealing with king tides down there already, right? And so you've got those high water levels now, and it looks like it could only get worse at least through Friday into Saturday.
I mean, well, honestly, we've been dealing with this through the entire month of September. We've had the steady northeast winds. We've had tides about 1.5 feet above what it would be normal dry water, or dry land, excuse me. So we have all of these coastal alerts that we have in place for Northeast Florida, the coastal flood advisory. We've had coastal flood warnings, which of course takes that up a peg. And that'll of course be what the shading turns to, that coastal flood warning, when we get into tomorrow and into Thursday. But yeah, I mean, we've had full boat ramps, the streets that run along the St. Johns River, the Intracoastal Waterway. We've had various streets closed, things right along the beaches. And this has been going on for 1.5 months. So really turning our attention. I know we have Jerry out there. I know we have to think about that. But this system is certainly going to be impactful for us Thursday, Friday. I am encouraged by what Dr. Knabb said about the weekend. So we've got some positives coming there, and there's a really fine line between where the tropical moisture is and that really dry air. Right now, we've still had steady winds. Yesterday, we had winds 15 to 20. Today and tomorrow, we're kind of in that more relaxed phase as we transition to Thursday and Friday, but we're still seeing gusts out of Mayport, which is right at the jetties, right at the inlet of the St. Johns River. Those 20-mile-an-hour gusts with steady 15-mile-an-hour sustained winds continue to pump water into our St. Johns River, and then, of course, feeding into the Intracoastal Waterway. So kind of a closer look here at the modeling that Dr. Knabb was showing us. And while we know not exactly tropical, the look when we're looking at the isobars, people who are maybe amateur weather watchers and are going to be tuned into us here over the next couple of days, they're going to look at this, see us showing the modeling, and kind of focus in and say, goodness, that looks like a depression and or tropical storm. Obviously, the dynamics are different, but the impacts are the same. When we get into Friday, Saturday, kind of this battle of dry versus tropical moisture, we're talking about beach waves of rain. If you're in Jacksonville and you are west of I-95, if you're west side of Duval out towards Baker, Columbia counties, you may actually be pretty dry. and avoid the rain. But we have got to watch our beaches for really Thursday, Friday, and early Saturday morning. And talking about those Carolina impacts, Bobby, we're talking about the Outer Banks, if all holds together, depression, tropical storm or not, they're going to be dealing with surge issues. They're going to be dealing with coastal flooding and winds of up to 50, maybe even higher gusts. So it's the Carolinas need to be very focused on this system.
And we've been watching Hatteras, right? We've been seeing all of the erosion that's happening up there, and they will get another round of northeast winds. In fact, winds could be 40 to 50 miles per hour with higher gusts out on the Outer Banks. A friend of mine, Swansboro, North Carolina, it's Mullet Fest this weekend. Not going to be a good weekend for that. Watch where you live on the map here. Yes, it's Mullet Fest. This right here is Saturday right around 3 o'clock. And that is the weekend weather right now for eastern North Carolina, including the Outer Banks, of course. But look at D.C. Some rain trying to work its way inland, but obviously Virginia Beach up towards Chincoteague, Ocean City, Maryland. That's where the wind will go. Now, this is the European model. This is through Sunday at 4 o'clock. And these models, even with nor'easters, but almost especially with nor'easters that stop like this on Monday, and as Dr. Knabb said, we may be talking about this for a week. That pauses and stalls out right near the nation's capital, right over top of Virginia Beach, Chincoteague. By Monday and Tuesday, it starts to go back to the south Tuesday night, and then it goes out to the east. So this is going to meander a little bit. This look will change. Exactly where it goes, when it's going to be there will change just a little bit, but we think it starts Thursday night into Friday off the Florida coast down towards the southeast and then gradually works its way to the north. These are forecasted winds, and these are steady winds. And so for that Jacksonville area, by Thursday afternoon, you see the wind is starting to pick up, coming in from the northeast here. That puts a lot of water and up into the river there too, Lou. Obviously, you know about that. But this is a big-time erosion. And that's what they've been dealing with a lot from the Outer Banks southward especially. Now, notice as we get into Friday afternoon, look at these steady winds. Wilmington in the 30s. Hatteras is actually in the upper 20s to near 30, but they're just starting their wind event. Charleston will have winds in the 30s. Then it shifts further to the north as the low develops. And look at that Saturday afternoon. Winds in the 40s for Hatteras, 30s for Wilmington, 30s Virginia Beach, Chincoteague, and then it goes up to the north. We're talking up towards Martha's Vineyard. Even New York, if this thing forms and drifts further to the north, look at Virginia Beach. Winds in the 50s. And these are going to be generally the gust. I think the average winds will be a little less than the numbers you see right there, but certainly gusts in the 40s and 50s from New Jersey southward through the Outer Banks can't be ruled out for Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday. Dr. Knabb, before we jump ahead to this outlook, you got anything to add to that? Or how should folks treat this as far as a forecast? Because we know things are going to change, and we know rainfall totals are going to go up. So it's not just wind at the coast, right?
Oh, absolutely not. It's not just about wind at all. And in fact, water will probably end up being the biggest risk. And there's still, even if it doesn't become tropical, it could be a fully frontal system, an early season nor'easter. It could take on some hybrid characteristics, but either way, the winds you showed and the strength and slow motion of a low pressure system means we're going to have multiple water problems. And there's going to be the rainfall because of a slow motion. There's going to be onshore flow, so coastal flooding, waves, erosion, rip currents, high surf, all of that. Maybe even some bona fide storm surge. And then you add in that this week and lingering into this weekend, we have higher than usual astronomical tides that add to the onshore flow, the coastal flood, and the storm surge problem. And if it rains heavily while you've got strong onshore flow, then in some places you could have a combination of rain-induced freshwater flooding and coastal flooding, the saltwater flooding. So again, as we go through this week, it will get worse. That pressure gradient from central northern Florida northward to the Carolinas. So it's already going to be a problem Thursday and Friday. And in Jacksonville area, you could gust the tropical storm force late this week, especially at the coastlines. But as this high digs down and this low develops, that pressure gradient gets tighter and tighter. So even before the low really takes shape this weekend, the water problems and the onshore flow are going to be a problem on Friday from northern Florida to North Carolina. And then the low just adds to the problems, especially if it goes as far north as forecast here in the Euro. Saturday into Sunday, we could have problems with coastal flooding all the way up to places like the Jersey Shore or Long Island Sound. So just like with a tropical system, a non-tropical or hybrid system, who gets the worst winds, rainfall, and coastal flooding will be very track dependent, but the entire East Coast is at risk.
And you know, this is that time of the year where we're starting to get that cooler air up north. We're getting obviously the drier air. And so this is a little bit different than a tropical system. Dr. Knabb, how much does the cooler, drier air play a part in intensifying, deepening that low pressure? This is almost looking like a classic nor'easter once it gets up towards the mid-Atlantic states, because it's going to pull in some of that drier and cooler air. Meanwhile, warm, moist air on the east side is coming up. Is that going to help this get stronger?
Yeah, temperature contrast, even in October, you don't have to wait till wintertime nor'easters to get temperature contrast that can cause a strengthening low pressure system. And those temperature contrasts exist in all layers of the atmosphere and even at the surface, because with this big trough coming in, that's going to bring colder air into the middle and upper levels, and you'll have the warmer tropical air out here. That temperature contrast is what is causing that surface low to form and to have this strong dip in the jet stream. Then you add to the fact that down in here, you've got the warm waters of the Gulf Stream. So even if this doesn't become a tropical or even subtropical hybrid kind of system, the presence of the warm waters is going to add fuel to the system. And with the cooler, drier air on the continent as the trough moves in, but with the warm, moist air and the warmth and instability over the Gulf Stream, that adds temperature contrast at the surface that feeds into the system's thunderstorms that add to the temperature contrast. So even without being fully tropical, even if it doesn't get a name, could have a lot of power, and it could have many of the same impacts as a tropical storm.
And I mean, I'm trying to think back, guys. Do you remember the last time we've seen it's kind of a hybrid nor'easter, but one go to the northeast, pause, stall, and come back? Because that doesn't happen very often. We do think, though, as it's coming back down to the south, if that does happen, it will actually weaken just a little bit. So it's really Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as it's moving northward up the coast that we expect the highest winds and the heaviest rains from it, but it's really going to add up. Dr. Knabb, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit more about that local Florida weather because, you know, we don't want our friends out on the coast there to have to deal with that kind of weather, but here in Florida, that low forming is going to actually pull in cooler and drier air for us. In fact, all the way down through the peninsula, and it'll be one of the best shots of fall weather that we've had so far this year. So we can start with that, guys, if you want. We've got a lot of moisture around. We've been humid. Of course, you understand all of that. But we do end up looking at that dry air coming behind the front that we've been talking about, okay? That'll get down to the Carolinas. Once the low starts to form, Dr. Knabb, that's going to go all the way down. And Lou, you know what it's like to have the humidity, and he's not going to have it. He's going to get a little bit of a break of it, but he's going to have to deal with the wind. I do have some maps here. I want to show you some of the dry air trying to get to Florida, and you'll see in this map that basically we have what we were talking about, the warm, moist air on one side and the drier air. And you can see as it moves to the south here, there's the low trying to develop. That brown that you see in there, this is all that drier air. And this is what's going to be pushing down towards the south. So, yes, it's tough weather up here along the coast, but it's actually on the backside going to be some really nice weather for the deep south and the Florida areas as things start to push in from the north and the northwest. Look at the dew points here. In fact, some of ours will probably dip in the Tampa area down into the upper 50s by the time we get towards Sunday. So things are looking a whole lot better for us here. Just a quick break, a taste of fall, I should say, a good break from that humidity. All right, guys. Thank you very much, Dr. Knapp. Good to talk to you. Lou, good luck. We'll be talking to you here locally.
Be safe.
Dr. Knapp, thank you.
And we'll be talking to you guys throughout the week here. everybody along the coast, please make sure you tune in to keep track of this forecast, as things are going to change just a little bit. And as Dr. Knabb said, watch that water. There's going to be a lot of water around.
And a big thanks to Lou and
Windows
Dr.
are
Knabb
created
and
and
Bobby
installed
out
with
there
different levels of quality.
for kind of the overall broad spectrum look at the tropical forecast and also kind of what we're going to be expecting here closer to home. But I really want to delve into a little bit more of what we're expecting locally here on the First Coast in Jacksonville and really up and down that I-95 corridor here across northeast Florida and southeast Georgia. So let's kickstart you off with a look at your Wednesday tomorrow. Honestly, going to be the pick of the week. It is looking nice. The onshore flow that we've had, yes, that's going to remain. Still going to be a little bit breezy out there, but it is going to be drier. We're going to have a little bit more sunshine, not nearly as much thick cloud cover at times, and our rain chances overall will be lower. So temperatures may actually reach the upper 80s in some locations tomorrow, especially for some of our coastal areas out there. So mid to upper 80s tomorrow, mostly sunny to partly cloudy skies. As we take a look at the high-res futurecast, you'll notice that. Maybe just one or two isolated stray showers tomorrow. We're keeping our rain chances at about 10 to 15% for your Wednesday. Different story, though, by Thursday. The moisture begins to return. That northeast onshore flow that Bobby and Lou and Dr. Knabb were talking about, that begins to ramp up a little bit more as that coastal low off to the east of us begins to gradually develop. So the winds will pick up, as will the moisture moving on shore. So we're primarily going to be watching for some of our coastal areas, but because the surface level winds and the winds 5, 10, 15,000 feet aloft are also quite strong out of the northeast, that will help propel some of the moisture and some of those showers a little bit further inland. So just because you live perhaps west of the St. Johns River doesn't mean you're going to be completely dry on Thursday. No, I do think, especially where some of those showers do set up, they will progress well inland, similar to kind of what happened earlier this past weekend, especially on Saturday and Sunday. So we're going to be watching for rain chances on your Thursday. We're thinking about 60% coverage, but again, quite windy at the coast. Sustained winds about 15 to 20, gusts upwards of about 25 to 30 miles per hour, specifically for the beaches. And really, we have that cold front dropping in across the southeast as well, kind of adding in a little bit of some extra uplift to some of the showers and perhaps even isolated thunderstorms that we try to see there on Thursday afternoon and into the early evening hours. Then by really late Friday and into the start of the weekend, there is that coastal low trying to develop. It's really going to bash the Carolinas, unfortunately. So really from, I would say, Myrtle Beach up through Wilmington toward the Outer Banks, some very, very gusty winds. They've already dealt with multiple, significant coastal impacts from several different tropical systems or even, hurricanes kind of scraping by there this season. So unfortunately, they're going to see another round of that this weekend. We will see the rain, at least along our coastal areas on Friday, and we'll see the wind, but perhaps not nearly as extensive of impacts. We are still going to have some coastal flood advisories during moments of high tide. Yes, we're still going to be watching for those waters to come up anywhere from 2 to 3 feet above normal dry ground. So moderate nuisance flooding will certainly still be the case, and you're just going to need to be really mindful of that, especially with the full moon out there. But there's a look kind of at your rain chances for Thursday. As we fast forward it, here's a look at those winds that I was talking about. So not too bad tomorrow. Thursday, as the low begins to develop, you'll notice those brighter reds and orange colors beginning to, spark up and develop a little bit more so, especially by the latter part of Thursday, and then overnight and into early Friday, even have a few splotches of pink there. So these are sustained winds out of the northeast, 20, 25 miles per hour. Certainly wouldn't be surprised if a few of our coastal areas do get wind gusts upwards of about 35 to even 40 miles per hour. So it's that really strong wind that's really going to just plug up the St. Johns River. That's why there were coastal flood warnings in effect for, the St. Johns River in Putnam County, who has seen moderate flooding already from it. So that will continue to be a cause for concern and something we're going to watch here through the end of the week and even into the start of the weekend. But then Friday, primarily coastal rain chances. It's still going to be windy, but as that low begins to pull away just a little bit to the east and northeast, there is going to be some drier air wrapped in around on the backside of that, as Bobby had kind of mentioned. So western areas or inland locations out towards the I-75 corridor, the Suwannee, the Okefenokee. You may get a couple drops, perhaps a stray shower, but really we're focusing primarily on that I-95 corridor and then east from there out towards the coastline and the beaches on Friday. And also, as Bobby mentioned, behind it, as that system swings up towards the Carolinas, we get all of this